I could have kept this information to myself, but I wanted everyone to know my story, and just my life and how everything went at Sycamore Springs, a Pinnacle property. So when we initially were looking to move out of our old apartment and into an apartment, we went to Sycamore Springs as it was on a website that we were looking at. And we were looking for a 2-bedroom apartment. When we got to the leasing office, they started telling us about a nice big 3-bedroom that we had. And I told them what I did for a living and that I worked from home a lot of the time and that I was working on my book. And because of these things, they said we'd have plenty of room to create an office space or do whatever we wanted in a 3rd bedroom, which we had never even thought about getting a 3-bedroom before. So we just kind of said, okay, let's do it. When can we see it? Now, they didn't have any floor plans or models or anything for us to see of the 3 bedrooms. So we had to lease the apartment without actually seeing anything about the apartment when we moved into it. We just had to move into it without being able to see it. I mean, that's just how it went. So when we moved into the apartment, which was May 8th, we walked into the apartment and the first thing that was kind of off was the smell. It actually smelled funny. It smelled bad. We expected wet paint, or we expected like carpet smell, but we actually didn't. We actually got into the apartment and it wasn't the best of smells. So we were walking through the apartment and doing the move-in checklist because it was fresh in our hands and we had the keys and everything, and we just walked from room to room expecting things. So the first thing that I noticed is the house wasn't clean. When we walked into the kitchen, I took my shoes off in the living room and walked through the living room to get to the kitchen. And there were things that were on the kitchen floor that were kind of getting stuck to my feet. So I thought that was weird. And I just remember to bring the broom from the other apartment before so you can sweep it up. So as we walked more in the apartment, we noticed the kitchen cabinets were not cleaned, and we went through looking at the walls, and the walls had paint that was dripping down, and in other areas where you can tell, I don't know, maybe they cleaned it quickly. The paint was kind of chipping or peeling or coming off or smudging or something of some sort. So the paint was kind of coming off of the walls. In other rooms, the sprinkler systems were still covered in tape. And then we made it to the bathroom, the master bathroom. So the master bathroom cabinets were completely filthy. We were rubbing our hands across it and getting some dusty, dirty, red, I don't know, it was like a red powder of some sort, maybe makeup, I don't know. We looked in the tub. The tub was actually dirty. And what kind of caught my attention was like this black, dark smudges or something that I thought was in the carpet. So I immediately stopped and called a leasing consultant. Her name was Zandra, and asked Zandra to come down and walk through the rest of the apartment with us before we saw anything else. When Sandra came down, we went back to the closet and I rubbed my hand through what I thought was dirt or smudge, when come to find out it was about 40 to 50 dead bees on the floor, and we ended up scooping them out. She then kind of, I don't want to say she freaked out, but she kind of was, just like, oh my God, what is going on? I just left this apartment last night or the day before. She said she had personally cleaned it herself after the Make Ready people cleaned it because she didn't feel like it was clean enough. Yeah, it was kind of a hard day. We spent the rest of the day cleaning up the apartment, wiping down everything, vacuuming. We ended up cleaning the cabinet, the stove, sweeping, mopping, cleaning, just anything that needed cleaning. And then we ended up moving the furniture in the next day. So the second week into Sycamore Springs, I came downstairs one morning and I was getting ready to go to work. And I noticed that the window had been busted out of my car. And then I have 2 cars. My second car, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, I actually walked outside and there was nails everywhere on the ground in front of car number 1. So I called Sycamore Springs thinking maybe it was something malicious, and I called Sycamore Springs and actually called the police. Sycamore Springs asked me to allow them to come and look at the nails first. So they sent a maintenance man to come and look at the nails. He came and swept up all the nails. It was probably about 20 nails. Come to find out there were carpet tacks used, I guess, to pin carpet down or some sort. So they got all the nails up. So a little while later, our second car, was driving into the apartments and got on the side of the apartments where we live and ran over a carpet tack and busted the front tire. So the tires were less than a month old, but they were actually busted by one of the carpet tacks, just one tire. So we were able to take it to Discount Tire because of their warranties and get the tires done, replaced at no additional charge. But the second time this happened, because it happened again on the Friday, so the first tire was Monday, the second tire was on Friday. We were rolling through the apartment complex and the second tire went flat. We went in the house and we didn't know it went flat. And the next day came back downstairs or driving to work, not driving to work rather, but just starting up the car, getting ready to drive to work. And the tire was flat on that side. So we actually had 2 tires flat in 1 week. So Discount Tire charged $18 for the second tire. So I sent the receipts to Sycamore Springs, who called Discount Tire and verified the first tire that we didn't pay anything, but they didn't verify the second tire because I guess they didn't know it was 2 tires, didn't know we claimed 2 tires. Well, as opposed to them calling us and apologizing or saying anything, they never said anything. And when I called later, she said, well, we called, I spoke to Patty. And she said, we called Discount Tire and we verified that you didn't pay anything, so we're not giving you anything back. A few weeks later, after we were getting settled and kind of getting everything moved and getting everything where we wanted it to, we had already been hearing bumping, but I guess with us being so tired after moving in, we just kind of weren't paying attention to it, or we didn't know what to think. So obviously it's an apartment, we have neighbors, we have someone upstairs from us, but it was times that it would get extremely just very, 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 very bad. We would hear running through the house. We would hear, one day I was walking through the apartment and someone, I guess they were running right above where I was. So the air conditioner filter door, it actually swung down and like almost hit me in the face, and I grabbed it as it was swinging down to catch it. But I didn't know it, and I found out later when I complained to the leasing office after maybe 7-8 days straight of nothing but bumping, that this person was already being evicted for being a noise violation, a noise headache. So whoever lived in the apartment before we moved in, they had already complained so many times this person was being non-renewed, not evicted, but non-renewed, or just being loud all the time. So there was one night where I walked upstairs and knocked, and I intended to ask this person, hey, would you mind, just kind of keeping it down? Me and my family we're trying to sleep. And I remember knocking on her door, and I started talking, and I was like, hey, ma'am, would you mind keeping it down? We're trying to sleep. And she slammed the door in my face, and I knocked again, and I was like, could you just stop the bumping? And so for the next maybe 5 to 15 seconds, she kicked the door, screaming, bump, 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 just kicking the door repeatedly. So this person moved out, I want to say in June. And then we got new neighbors, and I thought to myself, this will be, hopefully it'll be a little bit better. But it didn't get any better. So we got one set of neighbors upstairs, and we got one set of neighbors across the hall. So our neighbors across the hall, they're actually 3 families living in a 3-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom apartment. It's 3 moms, it's 3 dads, and it's 7 children. The oldest child looks to be about 7, and the rest of them are between the ages really of 2 and 4. The kids are always by themselves. The first time I really started to pay attention to how many kids it was one day I came home from work, and I had my book bag on one shoulder, I had my purse on the other shoulder, and I had my phone in my hand. And the 2-year-old, or I'm assuming she's 2, I'll refer to her as a 2-year-old. She was walking down the stairs, so she was holding on to the rails and she was wobbling. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, she's about to fall. So I actually dropped my purse to catch the little girl and kind of push her back up the stairs. So then I just kind of started paying attention that the 7-year-old was the one that would be, paying attention mostly to the children. So the children would be out in the foyer or in the area that's outside of the doors, and they would be, screaming, hollering, praying as kids would. There would be nights at 9:30 to 1, 2 in the morning where the kids, and I'm talking about the 2-year-old, would be outside playing. They never had on any clothes. They were always either in a shirt, no shoes, Pampers. We're on the 2nd floor, so I started kind of paying attention to it. And what really caught my attention more than anything is just kind of the fact that they would be outside and the time that they would be outside. it would be like really, really late at night, and they were always by themselves, and we're on the second floor. And when the kids seemed to get ready to go back in, the door would be locked. So they would have to kind of stand in the door and shake the knob and keep turning the knob and turning the knob to get into the place. And so the neighbors upstairs from me, I think it's about 8 to 10 people living in the house. Because that's how many people we hear stomping and bumping throughout the house above us. So we've had to live our life like a continuous since May 8th to November 9th, which is today's date, of hearing nothing but them repeatedly bump in every apartment or in every room, stomping up the stairway, etc. They also have a daughter that I'm not sure how to even explain this without sounding offensive. I'm trying not to, but the daughter spits from the third floor. Her thing is to spit. So she spits from the third floor down. And so if you look in the front of our patios, there's spit everywhere. She also stands on the stairs on the third floor and just spits down to the ground. She also eats food and throws it out. So between the neighbors upstairs and then between the neighbors across the hall, it's noise from across the hall and in the hallway. It's noise from upstairs. It's spitting. It's trash being thrown throughout the apartment. One of them actually has a dog, and they open the door. They allow the dog to come out, walk himself down the stairs. He urines or has, he does his, I don't know, what you call it, dog. He poos outside on the lawn, and they leave it, and they don't pick it up. So one day I actually came home, and there was pee on my door. And so when telling friends and family and just kind of talking about this, one of my friends who's a leasing consultant asked me, was my apartment Section 8? And I didn't know exactly what that meant at the time. And I actually asked the leasing consultant, which they didn't want to tell me about it or what Section 8 was. And long story short, I found out the apartments are Section 8. So while I pay $1,400 a month in rent and water and valet trash and everything else, the people upstairs from me and the people up across the hall who allow their animals to pee in the building, feces in the building and out the building, stomp, bump, yell, scream, everything. I've been, cursed out by the neighbors, all this stuff. More than likely, the people that live in the building that I work hard for on a daily basis to live in don't pay rent at all or pay very little, anywhere from $40 to $100 a month. Now, normally I wouldn't care how anyone paid the building, but it is kind of true that if you don't pay for things, then you don't value them as much. So while I'm outside sweeping and, trying to keep the dust out of the building, I have to live with people that doesn't respect even an apartment as much as I do. So as our days at Sycamore Springs continue to just go, we just kind of realized that things were broken that needed fixing, and I started creating service requests for everything to be fixed. And so within like a month or 2 months, up to the first 3 months of us living there, we probably had about 15 service requests for various things. For example, the dishwasher, it doesn't wash anything. When we moved in and we finally went to wash some dishes, we opened it up and there's like a black or brown, it looks like, just imagine someone taking a knife and cutting into the dishwasher and pouring dirt and letting it sit and letting it stain and then trying to rinse it off. So it's like a bunch of stain, like marks or long lines with dirt in them. I don't know. So creating a service request for the dishwasher, we created a service request for just broken shelves. But the thing that we needed to create service requests for the most were the insect. We didn't realize it, but our first infestation was that of fleas. So there was an infestation of fleas all around the bathroom. They were mainly in the tub, mainly in the windowsill seats of the tub, just all over the mirror in the bathroom, but the fleas were everywhere. So Sycamore Springs sent a regular pest control guy on the Tuesday after we created the service request. So the pest control only came on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you didn't get a chance to get on the list for Tuesday or Thursday, you had to wait. So imagine if we created it on a Friday, we would have to wait until the next Tuesday. So they finally sent someone to exterminate the fleas. Now, I don't know if it was what they sent or what they did or what they put, or if we just had so many fleas that they couldn't be controlled, but what they sprayed really didn't help. So we ended up going to Walmart one night and just getting a can of Raid and just going crazy. So when we found out the Raid actually worked, we went and got more and more and more cans of Raid, and we just really sprayed throughout the house. Now, keep in mind, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that we had 40 to 50 dead fleas or dead bees on the floor. We actually had a full-on infestation of bees. Come to find out, there's a beehive in the walls, we believe. So the bees would initially get into their main point of our house, which was a light fixture in the inside of the master bedroom closet. Which to this day, I continue to think, how did they get in here? Because it's like a 1386 square foot apartment. So I kept thinking, how are the bees getting in the house? How are they getting in this closet? So just imagine their entry point is the master bedroom closet of the house. And so at first they were just in the light fixture. So I was just kind of creating service requests and calling and sending emails, asking the leasing consultants to send the pest control or send people to get them out of the closet, out of the light fixture. Well, they told me there had to be some specialist that came out, so we had to wait weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on this specialist to come out and see if they were going to spray or do whatever they needed to do to get bees out of the closet. So it went from them being just in the closet, and next thing you know, we had bees throughout the house and all the light fixtures, and then they began to get out of the light fixtures, and they were just in the house. So we were killing bees everywhere ourselves. When we looked around, there would be anywhere from 10 to 15 bees all around. So we ended up, now we have fleas, we have a whole Ziploc bag full of the dead bees that we killed. And then we had about 150, 200 bees in the light fixture. And I sent a bunch of emails to come get them out. But honestly, the bees were still alive. I don't know if they didn't want to come get them. I don't know what it was, but for whatever reason, they just never came and got the bees until a month later. And actually, they came and got the bees because we had our third infestation, which was the infestation of the moths. So we came home one day and I looked up, and randomly, this was maybe 6, 7 o'clock at night, we had about 5 moths on the ceiling. And we noticed as the night progressed, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we got more and more and more and more moths on the ceiling, till one night we had about 15 to 20 moths. So we started killing them. Well, we now have 3 Ziploc bags full of dead moths. And as the days progressed, we got more and more and more and more dead moths. So not only did we have the infestation of fleas, we had the bees, and then we had the moths. And so we just were kind of killing the insects and saving them in a Ziploc bag. So that way we can show Sycamore Springs. We took pictures, we emailed them videos, pictures. We scanned the Ziploc bags on our scanner and took the pictures and sent them to Sycamore Springs. And they kept saying that they were going to send someone, and we ended up getting Raid and just kind of spraying all over the house and dealing with the animals that we had as they came. That was the infestations. And then the next part of the life, so keep in mind that we had the infestation, we had the neighbors, banging on the walls, stomping through the apartments. We had kids running, screaming through our door, basically. One of the neighbors upstairs cursed me out one night. So we had called the police maybe at that point 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. The neighbors had been calling the police. Everyone, it just was crazy. I felt horrible for Austin police because they had to come out here even though they couldn't do anything. So I didn't know this, but in the apartment complex, to do anything about a noise complaint, it has to be a certain type of noise. Like, for example, it has to be over X amount of decibels high, and the police actually have to witness it themselves to consider it a noise complaint. So the police have to actually come to your house. They have to have the decibel reader with them. They have to take the decibels, and then they have to go up there and catch the person with the radio on or the stereo on to give them a noise complaint. Obviously, you're not going to hear too much bumping from the outside of the apartment while you're in the inside of the apartment. So if you walk up and you see people, okay, that was one thing. But from the inside of the apartment, bumping something, you're not going to hear too much of the noise when the police come up on the outside. So even though we called the police because they never could do anything. So whenever I tried to speak with the neighbors, I was either cussed out, disrespected, ignored, just a combination of many things. So I just got sick of it and stopped talking to them. But one particular Saturday, we were sitting in the house and we were watching TV, and we couldn't even watch our TV because all we heard was the neighbors. They were bumping, they were stomping, they were just going crazy. It was crazy. So I called the leasing office and I spoke to Cassie, and I said, Cassie, you have to help us. I've never said anything funny or weird or rude or nothing. I've never been mean to these people ever in my life. And I said, you have to help us. We can't take this anymore. I feel like my chest is about to explode. She said, well, okay, I'll come down there. And I said, okay, thank you. And so we waited 2 hours. We didn't hear anything. Nothing happened. They continued to bump, stomp, be noisy and loud. So we went to the leasing office. And when we went to the leasing office, we walked in and Cassie said, hey, come back to my office. And while I was explaining to her, I just can't take this anymore. It's crazy. We have these bees, we have these fleas, we have these moths. The neighbors are loud. It's crazy. We've been put in this box. We're stressed out all the time. It's always loud. I don't know what to do. Can you help us? And she said, well, I'm not doing anything until I'm done putting these rent checks into the system. And so I looked at my son who was there with me, and I said, this shit is crazy. So I said one curse word. When I said the one curse word, she jumped out of her seat and she ran at me and she said, get out of my office, and started screaming at me. And I was like, are you really yelling at me because I said one curse word? Are you really serious? And so when I said that, she just started screaming, I'm going to call the police on you. So I walked out of her office, and when I walked out of her office, I was standing in the office and I was like, I don't know what I'm calling the regional manager. So I got on my cell phone and I called the regional manager. I left a voicemail on her message. So we left the leasing office and we went home. So that night I went on Twitter, and on Twitter I said, this has been the worst experience of my life. I really needed to talk to someone from Pinnacle Properties, which is the people who own Sycamore Springs. I need someone to call me. We have this infestation of bees. We have this infestation of fleas. We have this infestation of moths. Our neighbors are ghetto. This is terrible. We really need someone to call us. When I said that, someone that lives in a Dallas Sycamore or a Dallas Pinnacle property, she started tweeting as well that she shouldn't have to get on the Twitter to get a regional manager. I live in a Pinnacle property as well. No one will call me back. I can't get a call from the regional manager. I can't talk to anyone. My experience here has been terrible. And then a third person as well jumped in as well and started talking about how bad their experience was at a Pinnacle property. So I guess the owners or the social media person at Pinnacle started tweeting back, and she was like, someone will call you, someone will call you, someone will call you. And I'm like, well, that's great. So I get off of Twitter. I don't think anything else of it for a few minutes. And then I started thinking about the bumping, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to hear from anybody. They're not going to do anything. I need to talk to someone above the leasing office. I need to talk to someone. This is crazy. So I pull up Pinnacle's website. I find their CEO. I find their CIO. I found their CFO, and several other officers. And I started emailing them. I emailed them all the same thing, which is the exact same information that I sent the Better Business Bureau, that I had been living in the apartment since May 8th, that we're in October, that I moved into a dirty apartment, that my neighbors were completely rude, that I had been cursed out, that I had infestations of different animals, telling them everything. I, to this day, have never heard from any of the people that I emailed at Pinnacle Property. On that Monday, so that I can get everything ready, because by that time I said I was going to contact an attorney, I called them and I asked for a copy of my lease for the attorney. Cassie answered the phone and she said that my file had been given to an attorney. So I said, what are you talking about? And she said, your file has been given to an attorney. I can't help you anymore. I can't say anything to you. And I said, okay. And I just hung up. I called back and I asked for the attorney's phone number so I would have it. I called the attorney and he immediately said, what do you want? Of course, I gave my information to his assistant and she gave it to him and passed me the number, or passed him the phone. And he said, what do you want? I said, well, sir, I don't know why they asked me to call you. I live in Sycamore Springs. I gave him my name and I said, I just need a copy of my lease. He said, I'm going to send you a letter. And I said, well, I'm not sure what the letter says, but is it going to be the copy of my lease? He said, no, I'm not sending you a copy of your lease. I'm sending you a letter. You deal with the letter how you want to deal with it when you get it. So I said, sir, I don't know what's going on. Can you explain to me what the letter's going to say? He said, why don't you understand? You're not listening. I'm sending you a letter. I said, well, since it's supposed to be quicker, can you please give me, can you email me the letter? And he said, listen, if you still want me to keep talking to you, you're going to listen to what I said. I'm sending you a letter. So at that point, I was just like, I'm not going to say anything else. I just hung up the phone. I disconnected. Maybe an hour or two later, I got a knock on the door. And when I got the knock on the door, it was a 3-day notice to vacate. Sycamore Springs wanted me to pack up everything that I had for me. Everything that I had for my son and I. The entire 3 bedrooms. They wanted me to pack up the living room and this fish tank and this office that I've created, and I had started decorating the dining room that we had never had, because in the other apartment, in the 2-bedroom that we had, the dining room had my desk area in it. And so in the 3-bedroom, I put the desk in the 3rd bedroom. But they wanted me to pack up everything my family had and move in 3 days. So when an apartment is asking you to leave, what they usually do, they file a 3-day notice, or they give you the 3-day notice to vacate. And after the 3-day notice to vacate, they have to go to the courts, and they still have to file an eviction, and then you have to go to court and explain your side of the story, and then the judge determines if you have to vacate or whatever. I hired an attorney. His name is Matt Williams, and he's from Williams, Leighton, Atkinson, and something or other. And I started working with Matt and giving him the information. So Matt sent Sycamore Springs a nice letter, and they stopped the proceedings. They never filed an eviction. To this day, they still haven't filed any type of eviction. They only sent the 3-day notice to vacate. After that, I had called CPS before, because the family across the hall that I explained in the beginning of the video, the kids were out until 9:30, 1:30 in the morning, and I had called CPS. Well, CPS never responded until that moment. I think I got the notice to vacate on Monday. The CPS people called me on Friday. When the CPS lady called me, she asked me, did I live in apartment 124? And I said, yes, I did. Or she said she knocked on. When the CPS person called me, she asked me what apartment number I lived in, and I told her 124. She said, oh, okay, this makes sense. So I said, I don't understand what you mean. She said, I just was at 124 and no one answered the door. I said, well, yeah, I'm at work. She said, oh, I thought the person that you called CPS on lived on 124. I said, no, I live there. I said, did you happen to speak to them? She said, well, no, I didn't speak to them. They weren't home. And I went to the leasing office and I asked who lived in 124 and who lived in the other apartment. And the leasing office people wouldn't tell me anything. And this is all coming from the lady from CPS. She said, they asked her to leave, and they wouldn't tell her anything about it. And she said they were being real peaches, is the word she put. She said real peaches. So she ended up leaving on that Friday, and she never returned. She never came back. She never checked on the issues, anything. But the next day, my lawyer was sent from David Fritch, who is Sycamore Springs attorney. He was sent a letter from them saying they no longer wanted to work with my attorney on allowing me to move, as opposed to the 3-day notice to vacate, because we called CPS. So my attorney replied back and said, it's against the law to retaliate against someone for calling CPS. That really doesn't have anything to do with Sycamore Springs. This is one person saying that this second person, their family, is in need of Sycamore Springs, and it's their duty, if they feel something is happening to a child, to call CPS. So you can't do that, and you need to return to the negotiation table and allow this tenant to be able to move out without trying to retaliate against them for calling the CPS people. So at that time, they dropped that part of it, and then again, they returned back to the negotiation table on allowing me to move out without being penalized or trying to evict me or anything of that nature. So in the end, we wanted to buy a house. So we're moving on November 19th, and moving not too far from him. We are gonna rent one more time. We took a 3rd floor apartment so that we wouldn't have to worry about anyone upstairs from us. We're gonna rent for 1 year, and after we rent for that 1 year, we are going to buy a house. And so it kind of brings me to the end and sour point here, which is, it's not a sour point, but just kind of brings me to the end point, which is, you know, during all of the struggles, during our move in, being dirty and the noise and just everything, Sycamore Springs never apologized to us. We never asked them for money. We never asked them for monetary anything off of our rent. We never asked them for anything. We never received anything. We never received a sorry. We never received anything. Just excuses on why they couldn't clean something, or why we still had bugs after living there for 3 months. Open service requests of why they couldn't or didn't come and fix things. In the end, I'm not opening a GoFundMe account or asking anybody for money. I'm not asking anybody to help me find another apartment. I've already found somewhere, and then later on we're buying a house. I'm not asking anybody for anything. The reason why I created this video is because I wanted people to have a look into my 5 months at Sycamore Springs, which is a Pinnacle apartment. And the next time you consider moving into a Pinnacle apartment or Sycamore Springs, Austin itself, I just wanted you to consider if you feel like these things are worth it. And, you know, just kind of think about some of the things that I went through. And that's all. That's the reason for the video. It wasn't for any other reasons other than that.